The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Peters, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before recognizing or yielding more time, I'd like unanimous consent to extend the time by 10 minutes, equally split between both sides.
Is there objection? Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I'd like to now yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from Maryland and the Majority Leader of the House of Representatives, Mr. Hoyer.
The gentleman from Maryland, the Majority Leader, is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the two gentlemen from Michigan, Mr. Peters and my good friend, Mr. Upton. There is no partisanship on this floor today. There is a universal expression of respect, affection, admiration, sometimes fear, always awe. I rise to note the service of a great American, a good man who has advantaged this House, his state, and the American people by his service. Today we honor a man who has sat in this chamber for nearly a quarter of its existence. Think of that. He and his father have served longer than a quarter of the existence of this House. In so many ways, the history of this House is the history of John Dingell and his family. His father helped create Social Security. John presided over the House, as has been noted, when we passed Medicare. And in his time here, John has had his hand in everything from the Clean Air Act to the Endangered Species Act to the just recently passed Children's Health Insurance Program. And John Dingell sat to the right of the President of the United States as the President signed that bill. And President Obama took that first pen in which he signed that bill and turned to Chairman Dingell and gave it to him. How appropriate it was for President Obama, a young and vigorous president whose tenure in public office relatively short, to turn and give that pen to an individual whose term in office has exceeded now that of every other American in history. John was here when we passed the first civil rights bill. John was here when we put a man on the moon. He was here when the Berlin Wall and the Twin Towers fell. So much of our institutional memory is embodied in this one giant of a man, the longest serving member in the history of the House, a walking, talking Library of Congress. One way to last this long is to keep your head down, to stay quiet and unobtrusive, to hope that no one notices you year after year. That may be one way. It was not John Dingell's way. But the other way is to make yourself so instrumental that your constituents and this body could hardly imagine life and legislation without your input, without your advice, without your counsel, without your prodding, without your expressing a vision for a better America. Everyone here knows that that's the path that our friend John Dingell took. For more than half a century, it's been mentioned 19,420 days, John came here to this chamber every day, asking what he could do to bring a little more security, a little more dignity, a little more prosperity to his constituents and to my constituents and to all of our constituents, to his fellow citizens. And he came here to this chamber every day asking what he could do to advance the ideals that he has held so tenaciously and so ably and defended so passionately throughout his life and throughout his career in this body. As Michael Barone wrote a few years ago, and I quote, "Whether you agree or disagree The social democratic tradition is one of the great traditions in our history, and John Dingell has fought for it for a very long time. The good news for my great-granddaughter is that John Dingell is still fighting for that tradition, still fighting for her and the millions of her cohorts. Very small. They will not know John Dingell personally, but all of them will benefit by John Dingell's service and passion and caring and effectiveness as a giant among the legislators of our history. He's still fighting, and he will go on fighting. We know how much more John has to contribute to the life of this House and this nation as he adds to his record every 24 hours from here on out. I want to join my friend Joe Barton, who's John Dingell's friend, as is Fred Upton, his friend and his admirers. Join Joe Barton in saying that we look forward to John Dingell's leading us as we confront the issue of the passion of his life and of his father's life, and that is ensuring that every American has the availability of quality health care. John Dingell will be the principal sponsor of that health bill and our principal leader on that effort. He has much to do. As Ulysses once said, though much is taken, much abides. I understand that President Clinton quoted that famous Ulysses poem by Alfred Lord Tennyson. That poem ends by saying that although we are not now that strength which in olden days moved heaven and earth, that which we are, one equal temper of heroic hearts made weak by time and fate, but strong in will, to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. Tennyson did not know John Dingell, but Tennyson spoke of the character and courage and commitment of our friend, of our historic colleague, our chairman, John Dingell of Michigan. Congratulations and thank you.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Upton, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This time I would yield 2 minutes to my good friend, the gentleman from California, Mr. Dreyer.
To revise and extend my remarks.
The gentleman from California is recognized for
Speaker,
2 minutes.
the distinguished majority leader, my classmate and friend from Maryland, was absolutely right when he reminded us that just last night at the great ceremony in Statuary Hall, President Clinton directed us to, in fact, read Tennyson's Ulysses last night. The thing that struck me as I listened to the majority leader again talk about John Dingell was something else that President Clinton said. He said, interestingly enough, if you look at the number of presidents with whom, and I underscore, John, with whom, as you said last night, John Dingell has served, it is 25% of the presidents, 25% of the presidents that we've had in the United States of America. It is an absolutely amazing accomplishment, and it's a great privilege and honor for me to be able to be part of this.